Well, Coasters, it's Bruce here, and today I'm at Cobden, and I've been trying to track down CJ's fresh milk, and by coincidence at an event recently, I bumped into Colin Cudmore, and I thought, I know you, and we started chatting away there, and then he started to tell me that CJ's fresh milk, that was him and his wife Jodie. I thought, I need to interview you because he's a coast boy. Colin, thanks so much for agreeing to be interviewed today. It's really appreciated. I'm sure you'll have a lot of people who know you, and it'll be interesting. What's your full name?
Colin Cudmore. Colin Roger Cudmore.
Oh, you got a middle name?
Got a middle name, yes, Roger.
I love it.
CRC.
Now, where were you born?
I was actually born in Ashburton.
Okay.
Yeah, back in the 50s, 1955.
Oh, so you're a 55 baby?
I'm a 55 baby.
Oh, there's some good models come out there.
Some very good models, and they're still going strong.
Who were your mum and dad?
Derek and Liz Cudmore, who were farming in Harry.
And
we had a dairy farm in Harry.
So when you were born in Ashburton, yes. What did your mum and dad do there? What did Dad do?
Well, Mum and Dad were milking cows at Mount Hutt at the bottom of the Rakaia Gorge back in the 50s. And then when we shipped it over to the West Coast in 1960, they managed the Lands and Survey Dairy Farm in the back of Raft Creek heading into the Cockatoo Valley.
Oh, just out of Hokitika there?
Just out of Hokitika. The Raft Creek Dairy Farm, there was 2 dairy farms in there.
Look, I didn't know that.
That was back in the 60s.
And were they owned by the government?
They were government owned.
Right.
Lands and Survey.
And so,
yes.
when you came home from the hospital in Ashburton,
yes.
Where did you go to? Can you remember which house it was?
We used to live at the bottom of Rakaia Gorge, and the day I came home from the hospital was the day I was taken down to the cowshed, and I'm still in the cowshed.
I love it.
I was actually put into a cream can, so they knew where I was when I started crawling.
What did tell me? What did you when you were kids?
Yes.
What did you do for fun?
Played around with animals and ran around the farm. Played in cow pats. That's what farmers do.
And it was obviously a good, healthy upbringing.
It was a very healthy upbringing. Very healthy.
Did you have a nickname when you were growing up?
Yes, I had a nickname when I was growing up, and not many people know it, but they call me Stinky Winky.
Stinky Winky?
Yes. I used to play in the cowshed.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
And the cow manure.
Whereabouts, Colin, where did you go to primary school?
I went to primary school in Cockatoo when my parents shifted over in the 60s and ran the Lands and Survey Dairy Farms.
Yeah.
And we were at Cockatoo School for 4 or 5 years until Mum and Dad shifted down to Harry, where they spent basically all their life farming until Dad passed away. So that was back in the early 60s, and they were on a Lands and Survey ballot farm. The farm that they bought was the first Lands and Survey ballot farms on the West Coast, and there was 3 of them done in Harry.
Wow. So at Cockatoo School, can you remember any of the names of the kids that were there?
I went to school with the Wiblitzes and there's Evanses, Amberges.
Oh gosh,
all
the valley names.
All the valley names.
Was it a good place to go to school?
Oh, it's a very good place to go to school.
How'd you get on did they have a swimming pool?
No, we used to swim in the river, in the creek that ran past the school. That was the swimming pool when we were at school.
Actually, there is a creek through there, isn't it? Still there?
Yeah, it's still there. Yeah, but I think there's a swimming baths there now.
Yeah, there is.
There is.
That's a neat little school.
It is a neat wee school.
And so, when you were at school, were you into reading books?
I've never read a book in my life, and I still have never read a book.
Well, you better not start now.
No, it's a bit late now.
Hey.
Yeah.
Now, where did you attend high school?
I attended high school and I think Mum and Dad went to Harry in 61, and we went to the primary school in Harry.
Yeah.
And I was one of the first students when it was converted into an area school. I think there was 47 of us when it became an area school in Harry.
And then it becomes Southwestern.
And then it becomes Southwestern Area School.
It's been very, very successful with students.
It's been a great school.
Yeah, it still is to this day.
Yes, very good school.
Quite amazing.
Yeah.
Did you have a favourite subject at school?
Yeah, playing rugby and running around.
Were you any good at rugby?
I was pretty good at rugby, yes.
What did you play?
I played halfback, I ended up playing halfback for Mid-Canterbury Senior Reserves for a couple of seasons.
Oh wow!
And played rugby for Mount Somers for quite a few years.
Yeah.
And played on the West Coast. Yeah.
And so,
yes.
what other sports?
Oh, right into hunting and fishing and tramping.
When did you shoot?
When
did you get your first deer?
Oh, probably when I was 12 years old.
Oh, was it that early?
Probably 12 years old when we could carry a rifle around. Yes.
Isn't that
did a lot of hunting.
So, if you had a favourite subject at school, what would it have been?
I actually don't think I had a favourite subject at school. As a matter of fact, I couldn't wait until I left school and went out farming. I left the day I turned 15, and I went back out dairy farming.
I love it. So
yeah, no favourite topic at school.
If looking back at your high school days, how would one of your mates describe you? Would you be a quiet, reserved, cheeky bugger? Or what would you be?
I'd imagine that my mates would probably call us pretty quiet, but always pretty outdoory, always out doing stuff. We weren't away chasing goats, we were catching eels or...
All very outdoor stuff.
Or building huts up in the bush, cutting tracks up to the tops or whatever. We used to... outdoor people. Always have been.
Did you have brothers and sisters?
Yes, I've got 5 other brothers and 1 sister, so there were 7 of us children in the family.
Wow, and they're still all there?
All still here.
Oh, yeah. That's a good number, isn't it?
That's a good number. Yeah, they were big families down there in those days.
And what are the kids? What are the brothers and the sisters doing these days?
We've all been part of dairy farming all our life. All my children have been dairy farmers. All the brothers have had a go at dairy farming. Some are still dairy farming. So we've just been a farming family.
So you know a bit about
outdoor people.
You know a bit about cows, eh?
I know a bit about cows.
I love it.
Yeah. So when I was 15, as soon as I turned 15 and left school, I actually went dairy farming over in Ashburton and did 16 years on town milk.
Okay. Tell me about town milk. It's not something that most of us know anything about.
No, the town milk days have gone now, but you know you milked all year round, 365 days of the year.
Yeah.
And you provided the milk for the town. And I went to the treatment stations and they came back out in the old glass bottles with the silver top on them. And that was the town milk days. And I think it got phased out in about the 80s, like when the supermarkets took over and started putting it back into plastic bottles.
I can recall the milk cart going past home.
Yes.
And dropping off the milk, put the tokens out.
Yeah.
And it seemed to be a pretty normal thing to do, didn't it?
It is pretty normal, but I mean, town milking has been a part of all of my life, and milking cows has been a part of all my life. Been around animals pretty much all my working life, and still around 66 years old and still milking cows.
66.
But back to town milk, back to what I did when I started when I was 15.
So, as a kid, did you ever want to be anything else than a farmer?
No. No, always wanted to be a farmer. Always loved to be. I never thought about doing anything else.
So, what did you do after high school? When did you finish high school?
I finished high school the day I turned 15.
Okay.
And my mum and I ended up with a dairy farming job over in Ashburton, and my mother took me over there, and I stayed over in Ashburton for about 30 years milking cows.
So,
and I know you came back to the coast when my father passed away, and I wished I had to come back years ago, earlier.
Wow. So the day you turned 15, basically you made up your mind, you were out of there.
You were out of there.
Yeah.
Never to return, but I have returned.
I wonder why so many of us did that.
It was just the way we were brought up.
Yeah.
Life was easy.
Well, so tell me about your first job.
Well, my first job was milking 180 cows for town milk over in Ashburton. It was 365 days a year. It was all year round. And I did that for 16 years on the same farm.
In those days, yes. 180 cows would have been a lot, wouldn't it?
It was a very, very big herd in those days.
Yes.
And they were like wintered in the winter time, like they were all shedded. I had big sheds for them because like the winters would be quite severe over in Canterbury.
Yeah.
But to say the town milk's all gone over there, it wound up in about the 80s, and then we went out commercial farming, commercial dairy farming, and started share milking.
Okay. So you started share milking back then?
No, I came back. I managed a few commercial farms over in Ashburton.
Yep.
And I think 30 years ago we came back to the coast and we share milked all the way around the west coast until we set up this business. Got out of commercial farming and gone back to the basics, milk in glass bottles.
So after Ashburton,
yes.
you then Came home to the
West Coast.
So did you go to Harry?
No, we worked for Nelson Cook up and came back and got a job working for Nelson Cook up in Cotarangi.
Yep. And Nelson's still around?
And Nelson's still around, and he's a bit of a West Coast legend.
He's developed more land, or more farming land, than I think anyone.
On the coast.
He's probably developed more than Landcorp.
Yep. And so from Nelson's, we ended up buying our first herd of dairy cows, and we sharemilked up in the Cotarangi Valley for 4 years for Robert Lois Sweeney.
Right.
And then when we left Sweeney's, we started to grow our herd a wee bit bigger, and we shifted and we sharemilked up in Barrytown for 3 years.
What was that like?
It was great. Everywhere I've farmed, apart from Ashburton, has always been on the sea coast, apart from up in the valley.
And is there an advantage to that?
I think animal health is great.
Yeah.
Yeah, the salty air on the grass, natural salt air. The animals are really healthy.
Yeah, that makes sense, doesn't it?
It does make sense.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
So, when are you going to retire? Because you're 66 now, mate.
Yeah, no plans.
No plans at all?
Well, you might as well carry on while you can carry on.
I agree.
Yes.
I agree. And
what am I going to do when I stop?
And here you are now with a it's almost a new adventure, isn't it?
It is a new adventure, and it's gone back to the lifestyle that farming used to be. Like the commercial farming's not a lifestyle anymore, it's a business.
Yeah.
So we've come back to, and this is a lifestyle farming business.
Tell me, how old were you when you started to date? When was your first date? Was it 15, 12, 30?
No, I didn't have time for that. I was well into my 20s before I even thought about women.
Yeah, so you're a bit of a late starter.
Yeah, very late starter. Still pretty naive.
Well, that was fairly normal at the time.
It was fairly normal. Yes.
Fairly normal.
Yeah.
Do you remember your first date?
Yes, I can remember my first date. Probably wouldn't want to talk much about it.
I know.
I can remember.
Well, look, we won't go there, especially with your wife in the kitchen. There, we've got to be careful.
We do have to be careful.
When did you meet Jodie?
Jodie and I have been together for about 25 years.
Goodness me.
Yes, and we've been married for 23. Yep. We've got a blended family. We have 7 children in our family. We have 15 grandchildren.
Already?
Already.
Oh.
I don't think they finished yet.
Goodness me. Hey, do you remember your first date with Jodie?
I remember my first date with Jodie well and truly, yes.
And we better not go into that as well.
We certainly won't go into that one at all. That was a good date.
Oh, look. What do you most admire about her?
About Jodie?
You know, she's clearly a good woman.
Oh, she's kind-hearted. Very kind-hearted.
And she puts up with you?
Yeah, well, she has to.
Yeah.
Put up with me. You know what the Cudmores are like?
Of course.
Most coasters know what the Cudmores are like.
Well, look, I've known some of your family for 30 or 40 years, and they're good people, really good people. So you've got a mixture of 7 kids?
Yes, yeah.
Same number as you've got
in
your family?
Yeah.
Did you go for 7?
Well, Dad was always going to go for a rugby team, but it didn't quite happen. But 7 aside, Sevens wasn't playing in those days, so probably could have done.
Yeah, my dad gave up 10, and so he was the same. Did you ever meet your grandparents?
I've met my father's side of the family, but not my mother's side. They're in England.
And so what did the grandparents that you met, what did they do?
They were school teachers.
Okay.
Yeah, they were school teachers over in England.
Yeah.
And my mother's side of the family, they were basically in the army. My grandmother was a lady, and my grandfather was a major in the army.
Gosh.
So, like Mum and Dad, they came out from England on a boat called the Captain Cook in the 50s, and they had to work on when New Zealand was short of farm labour.
Yeah.
And they worked on a dairy farm up in Kaituna Valley, heading up towards Akaroa, and they had to work on a New Zealand dairy farm, New Zealand property for 2 years, and then you become naturalised New Zealanders. So they're basically they're New Zealanders. So that's where the Cudmore family came from. They come out from England, and Mum and Dad came out from England in the early 50s.
So you guys are all Poms.
Well,
so
the blood is.
I love it. Can you remember anything that your grandparents said? You know, that stuck in your mind?
No, like they were hard workers. They were brought up hard. You know, taught to work, and it just followed suit, didn't it?
They were different days, weren't they?
They were different days.
They were different days. During your lifetime, what are the most important inventions that you've seen that have changed everything that we do. I mean, a lot of people I speak to, some have never had fridges or a fridge till they were 20, 15 years old. Some had, you know. What about you?
Well, I'm pretty much the same. I mean, like in the early days when we were in Harry, like we didn't have a fridge, we didn't have a deep freeze, you didn't have a microwave, you didn't have an oven. Like it was all cooked on either open fire or on a ray burn. All your meat and vegetables were stored out in like a concrete safe, you know, for cooling stuff.
Yeah.
It wasn't until in the early 70s, I think, we had our first deep freezer and a fridge and a washing machine. Like all the washing was done out in the tub out in the back shed and put through a wringer. Yeah. So things have changed dramatically. And now, one thing that has changed now is like technology has come into play.
It's racing, isn't it?
It's racing, and I mean, I find that really quite hard to handle. I'm still one of the, you know, if you can write it down on a piece of paper and a pen, then you know it's there, don't you?
Well, it makes makes a big difference.
It does make a difference.
What about the first time you saw TV? When was that?
Oh, that would have been...
Were you still a kid?
Yeah, definitely still a kid. Magic Boomerang was still around in Bonanza, so
I remember.
I think it was TV was black and white. I think it was 67 or 68. It was early 70s before we had. It was in the late 60s before we had television, and even when I left home, it was still a black and white TV.
Isn't that funny? I remember Bonanza as well.
Yes,
it was great, wasn't it? Don't you reckon?
And even like when I left home in 70, I mean, we still didn't have a yard washing hose in the cow yard, like it was all washed down by the bucket. The old man never owned a chainsaw, so all the firewood was cut out of the bush with an axe every night. That was one of our jobs. You'd go up to the bush and you'd have to provide enough wood for the open fire and enough for the Rayburn to cook the tea, and it was all chopped by an axe.
Oh, for heaven's
So
sake.
we didn't even have a chainsaw when I left home, and then later on, well, the modern day stuff come in, the chainsaws and the yard pump and
so these
the
are
microwave and the fridge. And
these are all things, of course, that had a huge impact, haven't they?
they had a huge impact, yeah. Changed people's lives.
So,
yes,
Colin, how do you reckon? I mean, you're in a neat little community here, and you look around. There's young ones around, and there were young ones in Harry. How's it different today from when you were growing up, for the young ones? You know, did you get a better deal than they're getting today? More freedom?
I think we had a lot more freedom in like our days of growing up, because I mean, life wasn't so busy as what it is today. Life's quite busy today, and like life sort of turned more commercial than what it was in like our days. You know, the younger generation has changed, and that sort of like happens. It's just changed with the times, isn't it?
Well, I guess we've probably changed them, haven't we?
I think we've changed. Yeah.
Well, you and I have.
Yeah, we're changing. I mean, in some aspects of life, I mean, we have to change with times, or we sort of get a wee bit behind, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
We do. Yeah.
Did you come across a person in your life that ever had a lasting positive impact? You know, an older person or a younger person. Did you ever come across someone?
Yeah. When I left home, when I was 15 and left home, I met up with an old fella that was farming in Ashburton. He was sort of like my father mentor to me, and still to this day. Matter of fact, he was here last week and still catches up with me. He's 80 years old now, and he was sort of trying to keep me on the straight and narrow, and he certainly made a good job of it. And he still calls in.
Aren't people lucky who have had that experience?
So he's a great fella. He's a sheep and beef farmer up the Ashburton Forks where I was dairy farming. Yeah. And he's still the only farmer up that valley that hasn't converted to dairy farming. He still farms sheep and beef and a bit of crop.
And is he going to stay that way?
And he'll stay that way until the day he's probably like me, carted off the farm.
And how would you describe your sense of humour? I mean, you've always got a sparkle in your eye. You know.
I think I've got a reasonably good sense of humour, as long as other people got the sense of humour that goes with it.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I'm a pretty easygoing sort of person.
Do you have any hobbies? I mean, farming's almost like a hobby for you, but do you have hobbies? Anything else outside of farming?
Oh, I like to do a bit of tramping, still like to do a bit of hunting.
I see, still.
A few years ago, when I was sort of a wee bit more fitter and made time, I used to be right into the cycling club.
Right.
I used to cycle for the Hokitika cycling club.
Were you any good?
I wasn't too bad.
Really?
Wasn't too bad. Yeah.
And so who was in the club back in your days?
Well, I think Mrs. Reeves.
Oh, Robin Reeves.
Right, Dulcie Reeves.
She
was running the club in those days when I was cycling over here on the west coast.
And would she have been married to Robin in those days?
At that stage, yes.
Because he was pretty good too, wasn't he?
He was very good. Yeah, I rode with Robin and vet tour over and all through the Port Hills and round Littleton many years ago. So you've done a wee bit of cycling.
He's a nice guy, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a great guy.
A nice guy.
Yeah.
You ever met any famous people?
We haven't met any famous people.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you met Jody, but I mean, what about other famous people?
No, my famous people are my friends that are around me. They're all famous, aren't they? I haven't really met any superstars.
Yeah.
But no, all my friends are famous. They got to be friends with me, don't they?
So, so what about organisations? Have you ever been in Young Farmers or Fed Farmers or any organisations that ever tickled your fancy?
We were heavily involved in the share-milk, the competitions like a few years ago when we started share-milking here on the west coast.
Right.
And while we were involved with them for quite a few years. We won a second and a third placing in the share-milk of the year competition up in the Cockatoy Valley, Kotarangi Valley.
Wow.
And then when we share-milked up at the Barrytown, we actually won the West Coast Top of the South share-milk of the year competition.
So you're good for
So we followed the share-milking competition around for quite a few years.
So you guys are good farmers.
Well, we think we know what we're doing.
Yeah.
We're still doing it.
Well, the share milker of the year. That's pretty. That's up there.
Yeah, it was up there. Yeah.
Have you done much travel in your time?
Very little travel. Very little travel. Been too busy to travel.
What about places that you've been to, perhaps in New Zealand, where you go and you look and you think, "Geez, this is nice."
Yeah.
You come across one of them?
We used to have that at Stewart Island. Done a lot of travelling to Stewart Island. Been down there doing a lot of hunting and fishing trips when Dad was still alive.
Yeah.
Used to be an annual event for us twice a year. Dad used to go to Stewart Island hunting and fishing.
I've never
He
been
loved
there.
it. It's a great spot.
And so you go hunting. What sort of deer down there? They
All
fellow
the whitetail, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And fishing?
Fishing, blue cod, snapper.
Is it as good as what they all say?
That's great. Well, it was great. I haven't been down there for quite a few years now, but it was very, very good when we went down there.
Actually, what a neat thing.
Fresh fish for lunch, fresh fish for tea, any time.
I love
Just go
it.
out and catch one. Yeah.
What a great opportunity you've had then to go with your father.
Very great. I mean, and that's what farming was about. Like in the 60s, there was they were family farms.
Yep.
And more times than not, your family came first, and the farm came second. And on a good day, you went away and you either went white baiting or hunting or chasing goats. You made the most of the good sunny days.
I've got to say
Dad's motto was like, when the weather's fine, you get out and do something. And I mean, basically, when they bought the farm, it was brought to wear the children on, and that's what farming was about, like bringing up your family.
Quite interesting. You often hear people say that coasters are a bit impulsive, but actually what it is that we can't plan a barbecue for next Friday night because the weather will be what it is.
It is.
So on Friday morning, if it's fine, we can have a barbecue that night.
Exactly.
So
I mean, and farming is very much the same here on the west coast. If you've got a fine day and you need something done, well, you go and do it, but you might not be able to do it the next day. I always had the motto, like if you want to be a successful farmer on the west coast, like when the weather's fine, you work, because the next day you might not be able to, because it could be wet, and it could be wet for 3 weeks.
Yeah, which is
like when I was farming in Canterbury, well, what didn't get done on Friday night was going to be done on Monday. But if you came to the west coast with that mindset, if you finished here on a Friday night and you wanted to do something on Monday, well, you don't know what Monday it could be.
Yeah, nothing will get done.
Nothing would get done.
Yeah, you're only a young fella at the moment.
Still young.
Still young. Anything that you've want to do in life that you haven't done yet, that you've got lined up where you're saying, I'd like to do that? You might not do it. Anything that you want to do?
Oh, we still want to travel all of New Zealand. Like we've got a great country here, like, and we haven't seen all of it. I mean, I've lived between the east coast and the west coast, and very really been much around the North Island or even the bottom of the South Island. So the plan is to try and do a bit more travel, around our own country.
And with I see a couple of one of your sons out there this morning.
Yes.
He's flat out. That's a great thing.
It is. Yeah, they're all busy.
And having the I reckon getting the opportunity to work with your kids is the greatest thing you can ever do.
That's great. Yeah, very good.
When there'll be a lot of young ones who will be watching this and listening to the, where you've come from. Is there any important lessons in life that you've learned that would be useful to someone watching this? If you're a young one, what are the rules?
Well, the rules is, just to enjoy life, enjoy what we've got around us, and make the most of it. There's plenty of opportunities. Working in agriculture, it doesn't matter whether it's like milking cows or shearing sheep or fencing or driving a tractor making hay and silage. There's a great opportunity, and it can be a great lifestyle working out in the open.
So, looking forward, would you recommend the farming as a lifestyle to young people coming through?
Oh, absolutely.
Why?
Because you're out in the open, you're out in the freedom. The space is yours. And farming is more heading back to getting a bit more away from the commercial farming and starting to get back to where we were in the 80s and 90s. The good times are coming back. Herds are decreasing. People to realise the bigger numbers are not the greatest asset around, and it's starting to trend back to where it was in the 80s and 90s.
Tell me about.
But that's my belief.
Well, look, it's fair to say that the one dairy factory concept seems to be slowly breaking down into specialist units, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Like yourself and some of our best performers are very small.
Yes. Yep.
What set you on the track of fresh milk, CJ's?
Well, it was going back to what people were used to doing, and being more of a lifestyle. We were milking 500 cows, now we're milking 15, and you can still make a living off milking 15 cows, but on a different sort of lifestyle. And it's all back to town milk. It's all year round. We were milking 80 cows here for the factory, and we can make the same income of 80 cows going back to being natural. And the great thing about it is, it's not, we're going back to the glass bottle, and it's not being all produced in plastic, and that's what we're trying to get rid of.
And is it healthy?
It's very healthy.
So why did they change? Back in the day, remember they changed and got into pasteurised milk and all this other. Why is what you're doing so good? Because people are talking about it. People are buying it in Hogartika. They're buying it all over the place.
Because today, with the day and the modern technology we got today, the chilling and the chilling of the milk and the harvesting of the milk, that's all improved. The hygiene standards have all changed. And the dairy regulations have changed, and how you can produce it. In the old days, it was put milked into a bucket and left, and it was still warm. We can chill our milk down now straight away from harvesting it from the cow. So it makes it more.
Do you think families are better off with natural, fresh milk?
Absolutely. The families that come and buy our milk say that their children have never been so healthier since they've been drinking a real milk.
Wow.
And some of our biggest buyers are all the older generation on the west coast that mum and dad milk cows or granddad milk cows, and we used to drink real milk, and this is the best thing we've ever had. So it's taking a turn back to what we were in the early 60s. And
so for someone like me that came from the milk being delivered by the milk cart and putting the tokens out in the milk bottles at the front gate, and now going to the supermarket, and there's yellow cap, green cap, blue cap, it's just frigging all over the place, isn't it?
It sure is. And is it milk?
Is it milk?
Is it milk? We don't really know, do we?
Well, we know.
But we know from here that our milk here is harvested from the cows. It's chilled and it can go straight into the bottle. So it's unaltered. Unaltered, it's natural, the way it used to be.
What age has been the best in your life so far? When was the best, what age for you?
I think the best age of my life was the day I was born. I enjoyed my life, and I still do. But yeah, my main milking days, my sheer milking days were the best days of our lives, and we've just sort of carried on. So there's probably no real best day of my life where
And you still have no trouble getting out of bed in the
I
morning?
have no trouble getting out of bed in the morning and 7 days a week.
Yeah, tell me, I'm looking out your window here and I can see the sea. Do people fish over there?
Yeah, there's a bit. Yeah, there's fishing straight off the beach.
Yeah.
Yeah, they get a bit of reggae up there. Bit more up the coast road, a wee bit further. But yeah, there is fishing out here at the sea.
Isn't that great?
It is great. Yeah, everything's on our doorstep. We could live off the land. We've got the milk. We have wild pigs that run around the paparos that come down onto the farm. We've got 3 deer that were running around out of the paddock at the back of the cowshed the other night, and we've got fish out in the sea, and we've got meat running around out of the paddock.
Oh, I
and
love
we've
it.
got milk in the glass bottle, so we're safe.
Well,
Yeah.
there we go, Coasters.
Yeah.
It's been we had a really interesting discussion here today with Colin Cudmore, and it's kind of going back in time, and yet maybe we're looking at the future, Colin.
We are looking at the future.
Really appreciate this, and look, Coasters, this will be spread over 4 separate interviews on the Coasters Club, and you'll be able to, once it's ended, you'll be able to go onto our YouTube channel and see the full interview. And Colin, it's fantastic that you've agreed to be interviewed. I really appreciate it. 66, you're still a young man.
Yep, very young.
And
we love the coast.
hey, I can't beat that, folks.
We love the coast.
In that case, we'll catch you later.